Okay, we'll just give it a couple moments and see who wants to join us in today. Make sure that everything's going live as it ought to. If you are joining me live, do let me know in the comments. Okay. Sweet. I know it's a little early. People are probably lying in bed, scrolling on their phones. One second here. Okay. Well, I'm just going to get started regardless of people joining in or not. Yeah, so I was going to teach today inside of bank, and I just realized that the thing that I was going to teach on just really wasn't it. Which is what is really funny about today, actually. So over the last couple of weeks, some of the things that have been kind of popping up in my space, even inside of bank coaching calls, is this idea that money needs to be pleasurable. That if we're making money and it feels good, then we're like on it and it's perfect. And that's lovely. Don't get me wrong, right? Making money could feel good and that's awesome. However, where I have a problem with it and where I get cranky is that it's not true. Making money, spending money doesn't need to be pleasurable. Looking at your money doesn't need to be pleasurable. Accepting your debt doesn't need to be pleasurable. Paying off your debt doesn't need to be pleasurable. Literally nothing about money needs to arouse you. And that's really confronting when I can personally come up with like a dozen coaches who are like, no, it needs to feel good. It needs to feel good all the time. Not really. And there's some reasons why. See, everything we do in our life is a product of our neural pathways, of the things that we do, we continuously do. And that is what creates our default. And so the idea is, yeah, you want to have making money feel good, spending money feel good. And so that when money is the conversation, it just always feels good. But here's the reality. That isn't it. And if you are in the constant pursuit of something feeling pleasurable, that means that you will avoid the things that are naturally not. Not everything is pleasurable. And before I actually get into kind of the nitty-gritty of it, I'm going to explain how I saw this for myself in terms of my money, but through actual relationships. When I was in university, I had a relationship that was perfect. Like by all definition, it was pleasurable. It was smooth. It was just everything that I thought a relationship needed to be. What ended up happening was over time, I started to see, and I was like, oh, we don't argue at all. But there's no arguments. There's nothing that feels unpleasurable in this relationship. But then I also had to look at the truth of that. I was in a relationship with somebody who couldn't or wouldn't or didn't feel capable of sharing what was real for them with me. So there wasn't actually intimacy in it. Yeah, it was pleasurable, but there was no intimacy because it lacked honesty, because honesty isn't always pleasurable. If we're constantly seeking pleasure, then we're not seeking intimacy. Intimacy has nothing to do with pleasure. It has everything to do with revealing. You are intimate if you are revealed. Revealing is vulnerable. It can feel scary. Revealing, letting your heart out to someone is not meant to feel pleasurable. It's meant to break down the walls that may exist, to shake everything that isn't actually true, so that you can stand in the truth of what is. I had a relationship that was based in the pursuit of pleasure, so I never got to be intimate with him so we could actually sit with the truth of us. But here's the thing, once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Once I saw that he wasn't arguing with me on things that he fundamentally believed, I couldn't unsee that he wasn't willing to be honest with me. I couldn't unsee how I wasn't willing to be honest with him. And then we started fighting about everything. And we didn't know how to fight at that point. We had no idea how to move through clunky situations. And so in the process of that, we ended up breaking up because we had no idea how to hold polarity, two opposing opinions, and still be respectful. We had no idea how to do it. And the irony is that money is actually very much the same. When I am in bank teaching, I'm teaching about financial intimacy, to be revealed in your money, to truly let yourself be connected and alive with it. Over the last couple of days, I've spent some time looking at how much money I've spent. I've gotten into the practice of revealing myself to myself about what's just taken place. And let me tell you, there was nothing pleasurable about that. That wasn't a moment of like, oh my God, yeah, I feel so good. I was spending all this money. It was like, holy fuck. It was a shock to my system to see how much money I had spent in 3 months in upgrading my life to a new level that I had never lived before. A level of spending that is actually quite normal for where I am at this stage in my life, but the actual intimate revealing of, right, this is where I am. I am not living in a cottage in northern BC with no running water. I'm not living a life that only costs $800 a month. That's not the life I'm living, right? I am living a life that I spent $50,000 in 3 months. There's nothing pleasurable about that. It was hard to sit with. It was uncomfortable, but guess what? In the process of revealing, I got to soften and accept the context of which those spending and expenses took place. So when we pursue the focus of pleasure, there's a tendency to only want things to feel good. And my dog is playing in the background. And what ends up happening is that there's fundamentally things that are not pleasurable. So we avoid them unconsciously. It's totally unconscious. And one of the ways that I did that for myself was I just didn't look at how much money I was personally spending for 3 months. I consciously chose not to look, right? I consciously chose to go on a financial unsober bender. But again, financial intimacy is about coming back into the revealing, to look at what took place when I was spending from an unsober place, to look at what took place when I was being avoidant and just pursuing pleasure. I was just pursuing pleasure when I spent $2,500 on Uber Eats. Was it my pleasure? But I have to sit with that. Why was that in my pleasure? It wasn't. Because pleasure also means that you will do things even if they're not respectful of who you are. In my relationship with my ex, it was pleasure. It wasn't intimate, because intimacy can really only happen if you have reverence. If you don't fundamentally respect your partner, how do you be intimate with them? How can you be truthfully honest when things aren't high and vibing. Because here's the other thing. If you require money to feel good, to make it, if you require high vibes to make money, then you're going to have many rude awakenings in life. And they'll feel horrible. And this isn't a curse. This isn't a threat. This is nothing. This is just how life works, because life is cyclical. You are going to have winters. You are going to have moments of hibernation and being a hermit. You're going to go through moments of grief and heartbreak. But when we have an orientation to things needing to be pleasurable, we create the neural pathways that deny that reality, that say, nope, making money has to be pleasurable. So when you do not have access to pleasure because your heart is broken, your subconscious is now wired that making money here isn't possible. Your subconscious is now wired to say, I have to deny myself the grief that I'm feeling, get back into pleasure so I can make sure I have money to continue living. So then you won't even grieve properly, you won't take care of your heart. And then you do that enough times that eventually life has to come in and absolutely destroy it, because you cannot live that way. It is unsustainable. And I've told people before, I will always choose sustainability over seduction, and pleasure is very seductive because it feels good, but it's not intimate. There is no revealing in the chasing of pleasure. So in the process of stepping away from the needing of things to feel good, it doesn't mean that things feel painful. And I think that's where people get scared. People start to think, well, if making money is not, Steph is saying that making money shouldn't be pleasurable, then it has to be painful. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that making money is reverent. That making money is simply the byproduct of what you're willing to respect and be responsible for. If you respect yourself enough to let yourself grieve, then you will respect yourself enough to ensure that you will have resources no matter what happens, that life could be chaotic and messy and fine. But most people don't do that. The idea is, well, if I'm in my pleasure and I make enough money, then I'll have enough reserves that if life happens, I have the space to grieve and I don't have to sell because I already have the reserves. Let those be the reserves though. Why can't you continuously be paid? Why can't you continuously be receiving in that time? No, you literally put a ceiling on your business, put a ceiling on your income, because now you have it associated that grieving means you can't be paid, that you are not worthy of being paid in moments of heartbreak. What kind of neural pathway are you designing for yourself? So no, I don't teach pleasure, just as I don't teach abundance. Bank is in service to reverence and responsibility. Do you respect yourself enough to be held in your own wealth, even when you're at rock bottom? It's a hard question because most of us don't. We don't have a practice of it. We don't have a practice of respecting us in the mud. When we orient ourselves to the concept of wealth, we think of traditional wealth, where it means that I have all this money and all these riches and possessions. No, when I say wealth, I say, are you worthy? Are you worthy of just like taking a nap, or are you freaking out about making money? Because that's not a reverent orientation. When you are going through the trenches of life, healing traumas, moving through past relationship hurts, opening, even the process of opening into who you actually are takes a lot of energy. Do you respect yourself enough to be held financially, temporally, and energetically to go to those places? Or are you so addicted to it feeling good that you avoid going into those spots? That you avoid having enough respect for those spots to make sure that you're taken care of? And to break this down more into layman's terms, like, this is what I designed my life for. I designed my life so that I could hit rock bottom and still be okay. That I could start looking at places of trauma that I've totally disassociated and say, okay, if I go there, will my bills still be paid? Absolutely. If I go there, will I still get clients? Absolutely. If I go there and I'm in the trenches of the mud and I am bleeding and broken and crying, am I still going to be able to be of service? Absolutely. Because my emotional state is cyclical. I am human first. I am human first. I am going to go through the natural ebbs and flows of which Earth does. I will have my winters, I will have my summers, I will have my springs and falls. Not every day will be sunny and not every day will be rainy. It will be a mix of all of it throughout the entire fucking year. And I will be damned if I don't respect the natural cycles that I will move through. If all you're doing is chasing pleasure, then you will not allow yourself to receive and be held in the moments when it's not pleasurable. You will avoid being truly intimate and truly revealed in the realities of which you face, and you will end up running yourself further into the hole and you won't be taken care of. I know this because in the process of grieving, the last thing you want to do is worry about money. And I mean this in the most transparent way. In 2016, my grandfather died, and the only thing people could focus on was money because no one had the money to pay for his funeral. That becomes now I'm avoiding the grief because I got to come up with the resources to take care of us. All of us were in that state. Like how are we supposed to grieve simultaneously of now I've got to find a way to make money rather than letting grieving being a process of being taken care of. I delayed my grief to come up with the money because up until that point, no one had even thought to respect death. No one had even thought, oh, hey, maybe we should consider looking at this. Everyone wanted to avoid it because it wasn't pleasurable. I remember getting yelled at saying, hey, like, do we have a plan for when Nono died? And be like, don't talk that way. Okay, well, it's inevitable. They're going to die. But no one respected death enough to even look at it, to take care of that. So when they died, we didn't get to grieve because now we're point blank away from something that fucking hurts even more. I've got to come up with 60 grand in 48 hours. When my nonna died, it was the same thing, except I was taken care of because I had already learned the lesson from my nonno's death that I never wanted to experience that again. So I spent that entire time between my nonno's death and my nonna's death in 2021 to make sure that I always had enough money in the bank that I could grieve. And that I could still take on clients. And that there would be enough content, enough teachings that would work my clients while I wasn't there live. That they're still held in the process of me moving through something horrifying and heartbreaking. I designed my life so I can hit rock bottom and still be held financially. Most people don't respect death enough to ensure that for themselves. But they also don't respect life enough to ensure that for themselves because we think, oh, well, death is going to be this like really big, profound thing, and that's going to bring me into sobriety. Well, no, your entire life is an opportunity for financial sobriety. Everything that happens in life is an opportunity for financial sobriety. And it's not going to be pleasurable. The idea that you can go from being a pleasure junkie to sober financially and that not be a painful process, for that not to be tumultuous and like painful in the sense of not breaking down in like physical agony, but painful in the sense of like, fuck, that's true. Fuck, I have to look at all the gross shit that I did when I was unsober. And I have to be responsible for it now. I have to be responsible for the things that I did. That is what makes it painful. It's not going to be pleasurable to acknowledge that you have to be responsible for something that you don't see as an act of respect. Do you see why I focus on reverence? Because if you are always operating, is this the most respectful thing for myself? Then even when you have to be responsible for a choice, it doesn't feel like the worst thing on the planet. There's nothing to avoid. Even though it's not pleasurable, There's nothing to avoid inside of it. One of the ways that this showed up for me even this week is like, as I'm going through the last 3 months, right? June, I moved to Montreal. July was my first month here. I had to buy all new furniture. I had to buy, get myself like organized here because I really only came to Quebec with a truck, right? I spent a lot of money in July. But then as I was going through every transaction, I was like, I'm okay with that one. Yeah, that one makes sense. That one makes sense. Okay, that one. I even agreed to a high-end luxury retreat, like bigger than I've given myself in years. So that jumped my expenses up extraordinarily high. And I was like, you know what? I'm okay with that one too. And I just went through every transaction. Which one was reverent? Which one was a deep embodied sense of respect for who I am and the innately worthy person I am? And I was like, yep. And I could be responsible for all of those things. But the place that I found where I didn't have reverence was the hardest to be responsible for. I spent $2,500 on Uber Eats. And I was pissed about it. I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Because I didn't have reverence when I was buying Uber Eats. There was a spot of like, oh, this will feel really good just to have food delivered to me. And it'll be just like, I can rest at the end of the day. It'll be so delicious. It wasn't reverent. Yeah, it was pleasurable, but it wasn't reverent. Because when I go back and I look at those purchases, I'm angry about it. I'm upset about it because I'm like, fuck, I still have to be responsible for that. I have to respond to the reality that there's a version of me that will chase pleasure when it comes to food instead of actually being reverent with it. That was July. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe did I get more sober in August and got, more financially intimate with myself? No, I didn't. Right? In my business, smooth as butter because I'm deeply financially intimate in my business. But personally, I wasn't. And so I looked at August, went through every transaction. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm good with that one. It was another payment for this luxury retreat. Yeah, I'm actually really good with that, even though the US dollar fucked me. I'm still committed to be responsible for that expense. Kept going. Fuck. Uber Eats again. Shit. So even though my expenses were already extraordinarily high, and even had I even omitted Uber Eats, it would still be high. But the individual transaction themselves, the context of which those things took place, was because I was chasing pleasure. I wasn't willing to be intimate enough to myself to reveal the truth. The truth is that I wasn't taking care of me. I wasn't preparing myself in the day. I wasn't planning my breakfast, getting excited about lunch, getting turned on about dinner. I wasn't doing any of that. I would wait till last minute, and then it would be too late to cook, and it would just be easier to order. But in the moment, it was pleasure. It felt good. In the moment, it felt good. But reverence asks you to slow down. So that's what makes it uncomfortable. People don't like slowing down. I don't like slowing down. So I had to look at that. Okay. What about September? Maybe September I was a little more sober. I looked through all my expenses. Yep, I'm good with that one. Final payment for the luxury retreat, hotels, spa days, bought a hot yoga package. Like I spent a lot of money on stuff. I'm like, I'm good with that one. I'm good with that one. I'm good with that one. Yep. I accept that I use debt for all of these things. I was not okay with the debt that I spent on Uber Eats again. Say it with me now, because it wasn't reverent. So this is where people can get really like choked up and they're like, fuck, like I always have these irreverent fucking expenses. And again, we take a step back and we go, okay, well, that wasn't reverent. We got to get sober. We have to acknowledge the truth of it. Because we just revealed to ourselves that we have an unconscious, deeply drunk pattern around that type of expense. The detox process doesn't mean I'm not going to order Uber Eats again. It's just like now when I open up the app, I'm like, fuck. I have to acknowledge that I didn't take care of myself today. And then the next day it's like, okay, I don't like the feeling that I had yesterday. Yesterday was rough. And then I go, well, what could I eat today? And then I go, you know what? I've got some prosciutto, some pear, some brie, and some balsamic vinegar and like bread. Cool. I'm going to have that for lunch. And I just take care of myself better. I have more self-respect to not put myself into a temporal compression, because that's a time compression, right? Didn't take care of myself earlier in the day. Now I'm starving. Now I got to order. It's a time compression. Now I have enough reverence for my wealth that I don't compress time. I don't compress money. So now I'm in the practice. This doesn't mean that pleasure doesn't happen on the path. It does. But so does pain, because pain and pleasure are both paths to ecstasy. They're the same fucking path. But I don't teach pain and pleasure. I don't teach abundance and scarcity, because reverence meets you in the fucking middle. Reverence says that there's truth inside of scarcity, that this dollar, when this dollar's spent, it is gone. Truth also tells me that I'm going to be making another dollar. That's what reverence is. Reverence is to have enough respect for the truth, the reality of which you face. Do you respect your life? Do you respect yourself? Do you respect money, time, and energy? Do you respect the world of which you live in? Because if you don't, then by all means, go pursue the sadistic path, go pursue the masochistic path, go pursue the addictive path, go pursue the avoidant path. Do whatever you'd like. But at the end of the day, I'm going to say, do you even respect it? Because the dichotomy is going to have you polarize and demonize the other side. I love pleasure. I think pleasure needs to be a part of daily life. And can you respect pleasure as much as you respect pain? Do you have reverence for both enough to be responsible inside of that? Because most of the people that I know, when they're pursuing pleasure, they're still avoiding very real, very honest conversations with people, with themselves. Case in point, right now, all stocks are down like a crazy amount. And I had to get real honest with myself. Like, I technically don't have any savings right now, because that's the market. Now I have to have even more respect for time to wait it out. So there's a brutal conversation, right? Because the sense of safety that I had, of like, oh yeah, like I could do whatever, and I've got all this money sitting in the bank, and now I'm just like, I mean, the money's still there, but like for me to take it out would be financially irresponsible. So I really don't have any savings right now because the markets are low. Tell me what part of that conversation is pleasurable. Tell me what part of that revealing is like orgasm on a Sunday morning. Like what part of that honesty is pleasurable? It's not. And that's okay. That's my whole point, is that it's okay for it not to be pleasurable, because we're not chasing pleasure. Pleasure is just a byproduct of an opportunity. Like, oh, that felt really good. Great, cool. Keep it going. Because here's the other thing too, is that money is neutral. Money is deeply neutral. Because you can get money when you're sick. You can get money when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're depressed, when you're in the winter, when you're in the summer. You can get money all the time. Money does not care as much about your emotional state as you do. You just get preferential and addicted to certain emotional states, and then you attach money to them. So when life comes around in its natural cycle, you wonder why you're in a feast and famine. Because you actually don't respect the natural cycles of life. You only respect the one corner, the sunny days on the middle of May. Those feel really good. That's when you can sell. And then you go and you look at people who have these like twice a year, once a year sales experiences, and they brag about it. And they're like, oh yeah, I only work like 4 times a year. Cool. But that also, I know for a fact that the month before you sell again, you're in scarcity. And yeah, there is some truth in scarcity, but it's not entirely true. It's been distorted over years because everyone's like, oh, that's scarcity mindset. Dude, scarcity just says it takes 200 years for the tree to grow back. Scarcity says that this dollar, when it's gone and spent, you'll make another dollar, you can plant another tree, but it takes some time. What about that specific tree? Do you care about that specific tree? What is that specific tree being used for? Is it being used for junk shit? Or is it being used to warm a family? Is it being used to create these multi-million-dollar buildings that no one lives in for 7 months out of the year? Or is it used to create a building that shelters farm animals? Like what is this tree going towards? What is this resource creating? This reverence. Is it reverent? Is it a deeply embodied sense of respect for your life and everything in it? It's a nuanced conversation, and don't get me wrong, it can be really complicated, but I just needed to say, because like this has been something that's been bothering me for a bit. And like, you know, I've had clients who be like, oh, like I just really want to be in my pleasure to make money. And it's like, dude, you're not always going to be in pleasure. You're not living life in a constant state of orgasm. Like that's actually just not how the body works. Like the body doesn't work in a constant state of pleasure. You need to come down. Go up. By all means, go up, but you also need to come down. But if you, in the process, coming down means that you stop being receptive to being paid, that's got nothing to do with your, with money. That has everything to do with you not seeing yourself as worthy when you're coming down from pleasure. Worthy enough to be paid in those spots. Do you respect yourself enough to be paid, even at rock bottom? And don't get me wrong, there's going to be people out there who are like, nope, because I'm only going to learn self-respect when I hit rock bottom, then I'm not paid. Okay, by all means, do that. Your life, your path. I'm not here for it. I will always choose sustainability over seduction. It is seductive to make 50K months. Really seductive. But it doesn't account for energetic capacity. People who are making 50K months require a lot of energetic capacity. Because if you don't keep that 50K, then you actually don't have the capacity for it. You keep dropping. So you have a feast month, famine month. You're like, oh, but I made 50K last month, so that takes care of this month. Right. So now you're doing like a pump and dump. Pump myself up for a month to make sure I make enough money. Then energetically die because I don't have the capacity to keep running at that level. For me, I would much rather make more money in a more consistent way. And what's beautiful about it is like my business actually reflects this, right? So like when I first started, I first started coaching in 2018, right? And I didn't take it seriously. I was like, I'll just do it on the side. And so I would do it like periodically with people one-on-one, didn't really run a program. I think at the end of 2019, I ran like a short 6-week thing. Again, it was just like a hobby that I did. And then in 2020, I decided I was going to take it seriously. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And I didn't do anything for like 4 months. I had like a call or two with people, nothing wild. And then I had like a $12,000 month. I want you just to sit with that. Went from making like $50 a month to $12,000. And I was like, God damn. Now, thankfully, one of the things that I knew about myself was that I don't do well with like high highs and low lows. It's like the very act of running up and down those stairs quickly exhausts me, and it will actually put me into like physical health issues, because I had done that in 2019 when I ran my consulting company. And so April 2020 made $12,000 in a month. The next month, and I was like, okay, I need to make sure that I can sustain myself. So I changed people over to payment plans, refused to take payments in full, insured myself $3,000 a month. Was that $12,000 months? No, because I couldn't energetically sustain it. Yeah, it was pleasurable as fuck to make 12K. Super pleasurable. But the come down after that was like having the best sex of your life and then feeling like completely emptied. I had all of this pleasure and then the pleasure was like gone. I was like, oh, well, I need to go get that again. I could feel that part of me that has the addictive quality. Pleasure is addictive. And once you're in a state of addiction to pleasure, then you get into a state of avoidance of anything that's not that. Once you are addicted to alcohol, you are in a state of avoidance to anything that requires you to be sober. Same thing. Financial addiction is actually a thing. When you are addicted to spending money, addicted to making money, these are both things. People like to think, no, I'm not addicted to making money. I bet you are. Most people have a crazy amount of addiction to making money. Gamblers have an addiction not to winning, to losing. The practice here is reverence asks you to be more sober and to acknowledge the places you're not. And it's a practice. There's going to be places you're not sober. There's going to be places that you're not intimate. There's going to be places that you're lying to yourself, that you're avoiding things. And that's just a part of the practice. And is it respectful to not look at the fact that I don't have savings because the stock markets are low right now? Is it respectful to avoid the fact that I now need to wait for the market to come back up? No, it's only respectful when I acknowledge the truth. And inside of acknowledging the truth, I now can be responsible for it, because responsibility is just your ability to respond to the reality of which you face. The reality of which I face by not having savings that I feel comfortable enough pulling from is like, okay, I have to be more deliberate with my savings now. Okay, I see I put everything into that one market. I need to be more diverse now. And here's the thing, right? Is like, we can take financial literacy practices all day long, but if it's avoidant of financial intimacy, then it's not you. You just become like an avatar of running the system of which you hate. Financial literacy is things like understanding how credit cards work. Financial literacy is like knowing that you need to diversify your portfolio and that you need to have multiple streams of income. And this is how loans work, and that this is how mortgages work, and this is how to leverage things like universal insurance plans that pay you out a certain percentage. Like, that's financial literacy. Financial intimacy is, can you be in your own body while looking at things that may or may not be pleasurable? Because they're on the flip side of it, there's people who cannot be with money feeling good because their addiction is to pain. Guys, I don't teach pleasure because simultaneously I would have to teach pain. They are opposite sides of the same coin. Abundance and scarcity are opposite sides of the same coin. I teach the coin, not either side, the middle. The place where you have to be really brutally honest with yourself of what the most respectful possible thing is right now, not for the future, but in this moment. When I looked at what I spent in July and August and September, and I totaled it up to $49,000, I nearly shat myself because I had to be super sober about that. And to be super fucking sober. Like, wow, okay. I already knew I was going to consciously choose about $15,000 worth of debt in those 3 months. My business covered most of the rest. But it was the context of which I was living in my body that I had to get sober with. The financial choices that I made, no problem. I used the right credit card, got lots of cash back, not paying that much in interest, paying cards off and like, I'm doing all the financial literacy things. But if I just did the financial literacy things, I would be left without the intimacy. And the intimacy says, wow, like, I actually don't like that choice for me. That choice doesn't feel true. And guess what? Sometimes the choice that feels true isn't pleasurable at all. It's just true. It just is. It's just the thing that needs to be done. Right? Like, you've got people who have debt. The more that you need it to be painful to pay off the debt, or you need it to be pleasurable to pay off the debt, the less connected you are to the fact that it's just is, that debt supported you in a choice that you asked it to support you in. Reverence accepts both sides. So I can't lean one way. I can't lean 100% into abundance and dismiss scarcity. There's lots of people out here who over rely on abundance, and those are very much the same people who over rely on pleasure. When you over rely on abundance, the subconscious patterning that happens is that you actually are not intimate enough with your finances to know what you actually need. So you overrun yourself to ensure that those things are met subconsciously. But at the same time, they go unmet because you're not willing to look at it. Looking at finances is not an act of scarcity. It's an act of union. It's to say, who am I in real life and what does that create? What is the reality of the embodied person that I am? The reality of my embodiment is that when it comes to my food, I don't take care of myself. The reality of my embodiment that when it comes to actually eating, I need to be inspired. I need to be excited about my food all day long. I actually need to be thinking about it from the moment that I wake up and like getting turned on throughout the day to actually cook for myself. Because if I don't do that, the reality of my embodiment is that I will spend $2,500 on Uber Eats, which is really lackluster food. That's all looking at your finances is. Looking at your finances doesn't mean that there's scarcity. But here's the other thing too. Again, I can't teach purely abundance and I can't teach purely pleasure because people over rely and they get addicted to those states as much as they get addicted to the pain and the scarcity. Oh my God, but I can't spend this. I won't make any more. Yes, you will. I want you to spend this on what is true for you to spend it on. What is respectful of you to spend it on? Listen, I love my dad. My dad will maybe watch this one day. Love him. That man has spent more money on used trucks that he could probably have bought a couple new trucks if he just waited a year. But the scarcity of that generation is like, no, I can't do that. No, I need to hold this money close. I need to hold things close. I can only spend this much on a version of the thing because no, I can't do that. It's scary. It's the same thing, right? It's just the same thing on the opposite side. The pendulum. And then here's the thing is that if you're operating on the scarcity side, then the only thing that feels like the right path for you is to swing the pendulum to the other side. Now you're just going to get the same pattern in opposite extremes. So then you're like, oh, fuck, I gotta rein my shit in, right? So someone who's reliant on abundance, one of the things that happen is that their debt gets away from them or their expenses get away from them because they're like, I'll just make more, I'll just get more, make more. And so now they have to actually, it's like self-reinforcing, right? So they have to reinforce the abundance pattern because now like literally their spending is getting away. And so then finally they might get a little sober and they go, oh shit, this doesn't work. And then they'll go all the way to scarcity and they'll get drunk on that side. Scarcity gets drunk. Fuck, I'm too tight with my money. I can't buy the things that I need. I'm buying shit quality groceries. I'm not buying the things that I truly need for my life, like healthcare, like gym membership, new vehicle, whatever. I'm literally not buying the things that I need. I'm over reliant and it's painful. I'm a little sober because this doesn't work for me anymore. So now I'm going to swing again to the other side. Now I'm over reliant on abundance because now I'm like, this is pleasurable, this feels good, but now I'm not paying attention. Do you see how this does not work? You have to acknowledge the truth that lives in both. The truth is that you can be paid at rock bottom. That you can be honest about your financial expenditure at the very highs of your business or your income. But when we live in dichotomy of that, when scarcity is a problem, when abundance is a problem, we literally see what we see right now. A split between like the right path, the Dave Ramseys of the world, right? Versus like, who's an abundance person? I don't know, like I can't think of anybody right now. There's like 1,000 of them. There's just a split. And I refuse to take a side. I'm just saying that pleasure is just as addictive as pain. When you become addicted to pleasure, you will avoid the things that are not innately pleasurable. Just as that, though, when you're addicted to pain, you will avoid the things that make it pleasurable. You'll choose the more painful path, right? You'll have some savings in your bank account that are earning you, let's say 5%, and you'll freak out about a loan that charges 2% in interest. You go, no, I'll just pay it off in full. Why? You're making more money. Like the net change, like what? Why? It would just be easier if you just paid that off slowly. Paid that off in a range that felt good, like felt true. But someone who's scarce doesn't see that for themselves. Yet someone who's in abundance may not even pay that off because they're like, oh, whatever, I don't care. Reverence is the place where all of it is true. Not maybe in entirety. The pursuit of pleasure in its entirety is 100% not true. And that's the hill I'll die on. But the pursuit of pain and money is also not true. And that is also a hill I'll die on. If you are unwilling to slow down and get sober financially, then you are never going to be intimate enough with yourself to experience true wealth. Because wealth is the ability for you to afford to live your life. If you cannot afford to grieve because you are worried about your money, then you are not wealthy. And I don't care how much money you have in the bank account. If you cannot afford to be paid when you're being heartbroken, then you are not wealthy because you do not respect yourself in all seasons. It's not just about money. It is about the energy and the time that it takes to truly live fully. And living fully doesn't mean that everything always feels good. It means to go with the ebbs and flows of what it is to actually be human. And don't get me wrong, almost every teacher that teaches pleasure-based money has some amazing things to teach. I'm just letting you know that that's not me. I can't do it. I can't lie to you and say, yes, everything's going to be pleasurable. And I can't lie to you and say, no, you need to grip down and let it be painful. I'm going to point to you all the ways that you think it's got to be one way or the other. And in turn, leave yourself radically under-resourced in the process because you've denied the resources from a different path. Do you know how much resources come from like just acknowledging the truth of your reality? The energy that's actually created in looking at my finances the last 3 days of how much I spent in July through September, I got a lot of energy in my body. I was like, fuck, I have to redesign bank. There's like a whole new structure and design that's happening in 2023. And I'm like, I'm not ready to release it yet, but do I want people to come in and start on their financial sobriety, their financial intimacy? Absolutely. Because I want you to experience reverent wealth, not circumstantial wealth, because that is what pain and pleasure paths are. They're circumstantial. And when your circumstances change, so does your access to wealth. If life needs to be pleasurable all the time, then you will force and control things and ultimately avoid the realities that you face until they're too big to ignore. And as I mentioned in the very beginning, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Don't let it get so big that it has to scream at you. So if you're joining in live, this is a great time to let me know, like, what are you hearing for yourself? What is landing? Because this is a big topic, right? Like this is straight up a bank teaching, to be honest. But I needed to come out live with this one because I had posted earlier about money doesn't need to arouse you. It is. It's just a reflection of your embodiment. And if your embodiment is an act of reverence, then money is obviously going to take care. Money's going to be like, yo, don't worry, we got money coming in. Go take a nap. Yo, you got enough time to do that. Right? If you really respected yourself, you would ensure you'd have enough resources to let yourself go places that aren't pleasurable, rather than having to stay in this false sense of excitement. I'm not excited all the time. To be honest, I'm just not excited all the time. Like like for me to be smiling nonstop, like something actually has to happen. So imagine if I just like played pretend with you guys and I was just like, oh my God, hi, life is so good. You'd be like, that bitch is a liar. And if you go look at my selfies, you can actually tell when I'm in my down and when I'm in my up. And I'll tell you, I'm worthy in both. I'm worthy to grow my business when I'm in my down, and I'm worthy to grow my business when I'm up. And that growth is going to be sustainable, because it was just during the time that I was moving through COVID that I broke one of the financial ceilings in my business, where like felt like I was stuck at that number. I let myself be worthy at my very fucking bottom. Same thing happened in August and September. Yeah, I spent the most money, but I've also brought in a whole new program during the same time as I was like literally on the floor crying and just like being soft and tender with myself. You are worthy in every season. Money does not discriminate. You do. You tell money, I don't want you unless I'm fucking perky. And then on the flip side, those of you who are like scarcity addicted and pain addicted, it's like, no, I don't want money unless I had to suffer to get it. They're both addictions, guys. I'm asking you if you're willing to be sober about it. And then there's going to be people like, well, what do I get from being sober? And I'm like, dude, you need to go to AA. What do you get from being sober? I don't know what to tell you. What do you think you're going to get from sobriety? What a question. And I actually had someone ask me this on TikTok. It was like, how much is your container and what results can I expect? I was like, bro, no. I don't know what results you can expect, because I actually don't know what you're worth. I trust you're worth something. And I trust you're worth much more than the version of you that's operating right now. But I don't know, because I actually don't know how you're going to show up in the container. I don't know if you're going to put in the work. I don't know if you're going to go on a bender, because we all do. I just did. I went on a financial bender around my food. It happens. It's a practice. This isn't the kind of sobriety where it's like you need to go in a radical detox. This is the kind of sobriety that you just work at it and you go, okay, I went on a bender. Can I have grace for myself? Can I have reverence for the version of me that was not sober? Can I respect her? Can I respect that she just didn't have what I know now do to stay sober there? It's extending grace to yourself and just being like, okay, I got it. I hear you. I see it now. I can't unsee it. This was me last night. Last night I chose to have beans and bread because that's what I had at home, and instead of ordering Uber Eats, because I was like, I need protein and I'm too lazy to cook. And I didn't plan this out, but like, can I just do something just a little bit more sober for myself than I have ordinarily done? Now, this is not like a good choice of a meal, but after eating junk food from Uber Eats for a while, it is actually the better choice for me. It's not the best choice. It's the better one. It's not the truest choice. It's the truer one. Right. And this is why, like, a lot of my work, I have a hard time saying that any of my work is transformational, because it's evolutionary. It's closer to your higher self, because you're never going to be your higher self. That's the whole point. Because your higher self pulls you along to these journeys, and it's saying, well, are you closer to them? How close to your higher self are you? Are you intimate? Are you intimate with them, or are you avoiding the truths that they want to show you? And listen, bank isn't for everybody. I'm going to be really honest about that. Even with the transitions that are happening in the new year, and I'm like feeling into them still, I know this. I know that it's going to feel that I'm going to probably have some clients leave too, because they're going to be like, no, I don't want to do this. But I'm really here to have people feel that they're wealthy regardless of like life. Like, can you just imagine for a moment that when someone goes through a hit of anxiety or depression, I don't use those terms, but let's just say, because, you know, people use those, that they don't question if they can afford the roof over their head, that they don't question if they can make food for themselves. Do you understand like the cycle that would actually happen if people stopped fighting the realities they faced? stop fighting burnout, but you like actually let yourself heal. That's part of the issue, right? Is people don't let themselves heal in certain places. I certainly didn't. I fought going down so long. Like I would burn out over and over and over again because I just had this fear that I needed to be making money all the time. I make money all the time now, but I don't have to do anything for it. I don't have to overexert myself in a way that's untrue. I don't have to pursue anything. I just got to show up and be with whatever is actually there. And sometimes what's actually there is an uncomfortable truth that I have to be with. Sometimes I have to be with a really pleasurable truth. Like I just, like, wow, like I increased my revenue by $2,000. Amazing. Like, oh, wow. Other times it's like, oh, I just lost $15,000 in stocks. Oh, fuck. Wow, I just lost $15,000 in stocks and I also spent $15,000 in debt. Oh, fuck. And I can pretend that that's pleasurable, but it's not. It's like, it's just a reality. It's just true. And it's just like with my ex in college, it was just true that there was stuff that we disagreed on, but we were not intimate enough to be honest with each other. There are discrepancies in people's finances, but the moment you can choose to be honest about them is the moment that you can be responsible for them. You can actually respond to that reality. If you're not looking at the reality that you live, you can't respond to it. You can't respond to it. You're going to be so far removed from the infinite possibilities you naturally have access to. There's an infinite number of possibilities for me to practice sobriety around my food, around spending around my food, around really taking care of myself. But you do realize that had I not actually gotten intimate with my finances, I wouldn't have seen it as much. I may have known in the back end, like, oh, I do order Uber Eats quite often, but I wouldn't have had to face it head on. It wouldn't be sobering. So yeah, financial intimacy isn't going to be a path of pleasure. It's going to be a financial path of sobriety. I never thought that I would be looking at money this way. I always thought it was like, oh, embody and eat wealth. And there was like this really catchy thing, but it's like, no, this is sobriety, man. This is about getting really honest with yourself about how you're showing up with your money. Right? And no, this isn't just a program for women. This is a program for anyone who feels called to like experience wealth in the truest way for them. Not true for anybody else, just for you. And people are like, and you could even say like, oh, well, the wealth for me is pleasurable and I'm just going to take you back down. And you're like, okay, what about when you have to run a funeral for someone? If you tell me that that's pleasurable, you by all means have fun with your masochistic life. But like, there is just times in human existence that isn't pleasurable, and you've got to be okay with that. But you can't sacrifice your like what you need in life because you're moving through those things. Those things need to be separate. I'm taken care of even when I'm grieving. I am worthy even when I'm heartbroken. I am valued and well paid and honored for my work, even when I'm in my down, in the sludge, on the ground, bleeding and crying. I need to be able to go through my process and still be paid for it. I need to be able to be a human fucking person, have my ebbs and flows, have my highs and downs. I need all of that. And my money isn't in question because I'm human. It needs to be solid. Like I've got this. I can go to those places. I'm taken care of. So I'm going to leave you guys there. Let me know in the comments what you're leaving here with. This is really important for your digestive process. This is something that people don't often do, right? Like you just received a very big conversation. What's coming up for you? What parts are you fighting against? Which parts actually feel like, oh, right. Which parts are like, nah, not for me. Digest it so that you only take what's actually true for you. And leave the rest. Because when you watch this again in a year, you'll receive more because you'll have the capacity to receive it. So I want to know what it is that actually landed for you. And if you're like, okay, Steph, I hear you. It's time for financial sobriety. You want to come into bank? I suggest you do. I've got tons of openings this month for wealth imprint calls, which take place with everyone who applies. It's complimentary. It's for me and you to get to know each other and really be clear if this path is for you. Because if it's not for you and you're trying to grip for something and you don't actually want to show up to the mat to practice reverence, then, oh man, this container is only going to show you the patterns of addiction that you already have, if that's the case. Okay. So I'll talk to you guys later. The application to apply is below in the comments. And I look forward to seeing what you're leaving here with.